Familiar faces indeed. Welcome back to the channel, Mr. Robert Lawson. I haven't had you on since 2022. It is good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Mike.
I'd like to introduce to you to the Australian Mad Metal Man, Harrison Kopp.
Hey, Harrison.
Pleased to meet you.
Well, Robert, last time we talked to you, I believe you were probably in the planning stages of this little book here that I have in my hands now. It is out. Little Steven, The Art and Soul of Steven Van Zandt, Solidarity Forever. It's a beautiful hardcover, by the way. Check out the design. Absolutely stunning. And I've been dipping my toes into it as much as I could this week, listening to some Steven Van Zandt, and I'm really impressed. This is a good read. And I guess my first question for you is, in this book, you talk about how writing this was your job, the book you were born to write. You've been researching it your whole life. So now that it is out and it is done and people have it in their hands, what does that feel like?
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. I mean, it felt really natural that this would be a subject for me to tackle because I did have so much raw data. Like you mentioned, I've been researching him and collecting material about him for decades. So it was a combination of things coming together that I already had and I already knew. And then my research went to another level where I'm actually interviewing him, interviewing a lot of his ex-band members and a lot of his current band members, and getting even more information that like even I didn't know. So putting it all together was it really was a joy and a real pleasure to put information from all those different sources together.
Oh, that's nice. I like hearing that. Harrison actually had a pretty good opening type question as well. Your first question, Harrison.
Yes, so what we all know with all these different bands and artists, everyone argues about, oh, what's the best album, what's all this. So, but I would like to know, what's the best place to start with Stevie Van Zandt?
I would definitely start with his debut album, Men Without Women, from 1982. It's a little tricky though because he went through a few different styles in his first kind of era of his solo career. So the first album is really soulful, big horn section, rock guitars, but it is kind of a rock and soul album. In '84, he followed it up with pretty much a straight hard rock record, which you would expect in 1984. So that's very different. He loses the horn, so you don't have that soul element to it. By his third album, he's introducing some world music elements and even singing in different languages. His fourth album turns into almost like a cold electronic funk kind of thing. So depending on which of those you're more apt to get into, any of them could really be your starting point. But for him as a solo artist, I would say Men Without Women. But I like all four of those records that I just described. Musically, they're all very different from each other.
As you know, I was listening to that 1984 Germany concert on YouTube from that hard rock period. And he had, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's one of those names that I've seen written my whole life, but rarely heard spoken. But Jean Beauvoir, who, of course, he played bass with on a lot of classic Kiss tracks on Animalize, Asylum, that kind of stuff. And to see him rocking on stage on a guitar and him and Little Steven both rocking animal print guitars, it was very much that Kiss Animalize vibe. But I really dug it. Like, it was a powerful performance. As you said, there wasn't the horn section, but there was some great music and great singing. So I don't know, Harrison, that might be, that was where I just happened to jump in and I really enjoyed it. I'm curious, Robert, I know you were a Kiss fan too.
If you're an 80s kind of hard rock guy, then I would say the 1984 Voice of America album, or maybe specifically that Rock Class 84 TV broadcast that Mike's talking about, that's good entry point too. I think some of the sound is a lot of the 80s stuff is a little dated now. You know, it's very keyboard heavy, and the drums sound like they're from 1984. But yeah, you got two guys both playing electric guitars, and they're kind of playing more in that heavy metal, Eddie Van Halen a little bit style that was popular in the mid 80s.
So lots of different directions that you could go to. Harrison, you had a question. Maybe we should save it for later. But Robert, I follow you on Instagram, and if you don't follow him on Instagram, you should. He's got some great stuff that he's showing off all the time. But you have quite an impressive collection. Maybe Harrison, take it from here. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, bootlegs. So we all love them here, and I just want to ask, what are some of your favorite bootlegs?
Like just in general?
Yeah, just in general.
Actually, if I may split that into a two-part question,
Okay.
Little Steven and in general.
Well, for Steven, the first time he was on Rock Palace, which was in 1982, and I talk about it in the book a lot, that's a performance that I had on cassette and VHS and even the short-lived video CD format for a while, and DVD-Rs. It's now officially released. That's, to me, one of Steven's greatest performances of all time, and it's the first time that the band ever really played in front of an audience, which is pretty crazy that they could be so good so early. So that was a bootleg for many, many years. So that almost goes hand in hand with the first album. For other acts, well, one I would say, since we keep kind of mentioning Kiss, is what I think is one of Kiss's greatest performances ever, is San Francisco 1977, which is the day after Elvis Presley passed away. And it's from the Cow Palace. It deserves an official release. All four guys are totally in sync. Ace sounds great. Peter, they all just sound great. It's a standard set list for the Love Gun tour. But that is, to me, that's one of Kiss's greatest performances ever. And I tell people about it all the time. I don't know if the audio is up on YouTube. I've got 2 different CDs of it. So that's a real favorite for those guys. In terms of video, there's a great Keith Richards live in Boston from the early 90s. It's pro shot. I think it's one of the best concert DVDs in my whole collection. That's a really great one. I do have a lot of bootlegs. That's true. A lot of audio and a lot of video. I don't know if my shelf is... Yeah, that whole shelf there is all concert DVDs. And there's actually another one on the other side of this TV. So there's 2 of those that are just concert DVDs, official and bootlegs. So I do have quite a few, but the Keith Richards one is definitely a real fave.
San Francisco has been good to Kiss fans with the bootlegs.
Well, when they started doing this new... kind of official bootleg series, and I heard that they were doing a 77. I thought, well, it's got to be San Francisco, and it's not, and it's actually a little bit later in 77. And it's good. Yeah, it's good. I mean, anything of Kiss in 77 is going to be pretty good, but that Cow Palace San Francisco, to me, you just can't top it.
All right, we have a viewer question from Henry. I know we don't want to turn this into a Springsteen show, but do you enjoy Steven's contributions to the early albums of Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes? Because Henry is a big fan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those are Miami Steve records. He produced them, he arranged them, he wrote a lot of the songs on them. You can hear him doing like almost co-lead vocals on the whole thing. He's yelling stuff out and "oh baby" and doing all that stuff. He plays guitar on all of it. Those are almost like precursors to the Men Without Women album. Like that's that sound that he was working on. It's just that by the time he goes solo, he adds kind of a South American percussionist and more guitar than is on those Asbury Juke records. But for sure, I consider the first 3 Jukes albums to be part of Steven's catalog. And in the book, there's a whole chapter that's just on that early era of Southside Johnny, because Steven's so important. He would play live with them whenever he could, when he was taking time off, or when the E Street Band were on breaks from tours. So there's a lot of that kind of information in the book for sure. There you go. Southside Springsteen 70s.
There you go. Thanks, Henry, for that question. I want to read something off the back cover. There was a blurb there that spoke to me. It said, every song, every album, every single, live shows, bootlegs. And right there, you show that you understand people like Harrison and I, because that is exactly the kind of book that we are looking for. But that's your hat. You did that with the Cheap Trick book. What can I say? You, sir, are a collector, and you write books for people like me as well.
Yeah, the idea, I've always read a lot of rock books. I read a lot of biographies, or at least I used to. That's the kind of stuff I like to read about. I've got books. As soon as they start veering a little too much into personal drama or gossip or anything, then I'm out. I really don't care about that kind of stuff, and I never have. But the books that I go back to the most often are the kind of books that I want to write. I wanted my books to be the kind of things that when you're hearing a song and you notice some little thing that you maybe hadn't heard before, you think, oh, I wonder if Robert mentioned that in the book. I got to go check that out. Or when you're reading, it works the other way too. When you're reading the book and you see something, you go, I don't remember that guitar lick being, from, whatever Rick Nielsen is quoting a Jeff Beck guitar solo in Up the Creek. I don't remember that. Then you're going to go back and listen to that song and hear it in there. So those.
I know when I read books like these, I've got like on my phone just photos and photos of like a line on a page. Got to check that out on YouTube. Got to listen to that again, sort of thing. Oh, that sounds like something interesting.
Right. Yeah. So those are the kind of books I enjoy the most. So those the books of mine that are the most well thumbed. So I always wanted to write those kind of books as well. That would just be packed with information. It might even be too much information than you need right now. But as you get into the catalog more and in the future, when you're looking back at some of that music, then the books are still there with a lot of solid, detailed information.
And, not just packed with information, but there's lots of visuals in here in color too. Trying to find a random page. But yeah, this book looks great. So well done there. How did you choose the photos and images that went into the book? And especially to me, I think the back cover is really something special. And also the front with these bits of memorabilia. Tell me about that process.
So for a lot of the interior, you've seen my previous books. I like to show stuff that maybe people haven't seen 100 times before. When my Guess Who book came out, one of the first reviews on a website was a complaint that I don't show the album covers at the beginning of every chapter or something. And that would be nice to do, but if you're reading a book about Cheap Trick, I think what the Dream Police album looks like. And one thing people don't understand is with most books and with all of my books, there's a limit to how many photos I can include before that raises the cost too much. So my previous books each had 20 interior images. So if I can only have 20 images, I would rather show, to keep on that theme, I'd rather show, I don't know, like a weird Japanese ad for when Dream Police was first issued there than just the Dream Police album that anyone, if they're reading a Cheap Trick book, they already know what that looks like. I'd rather show something a little bit different because I only got 20 images, so there's not that much to work with. Now with this book, I kind of broke the bank, and I think we have like 42 interior images, I think I doubled the amount, which did raise the page count, and I insisted on these pictures being in color because so many of them were just these great color photos. I didn't want to reduce them to black and white, so that meant we had to use a higher quality paper, and it turns into a whole thing. But I would just look at these great photos. Some were submitted by fans. Some were, I think there's a newspaper ad for Sam the Record Man when the second album came out. That's like, I always like cool artifacts like that from the time. And then a woman who's become a friend of mine named Zoe Thrall, she worked with Steven for many, many years. She was an engineer in the studio, and she would play a little bit of keyboards and some oboe live in 82, 83, and 87. So she actually submitted to me a ton of photos that have never been seen before, and with full access to just use whatever I wanted. And Steven knew that she had given me these photos. So, you know, there's pictures in there in 1989. He's touring Italy, and he goes to Calabria, and he's walking around the village of Calabria, seeing if anyone knows his relatives, because that's where his family comes from originally. Nobody's ever seen those photos. I don't know if he had ever seen those photos. So we got some pretty rare pictures in there, and then some of the interesting ones that I like say rare ads and stuff. In terms of the back cover, similar, you know, some like backstage passes that Zoe gave me, some weird ads. There used to be a zine published by a good friend of mine named Holly Cara Price in the States, and she passed away, unfortunately, but I included 2 covers of her zine to not only represent that there used to be a zine devoted to Steven, but as a bit of a tribute to Holly as well. One of the great collectibles that I have, and it's on the back of the book, but I dug it out. On the first album, all the guys in the band had these long black trench coats. You can see pictures on the first album with this Disciples of Soul, almost like gang colors on the back of these long dusters. So there's a picture of this on the back of the book, but this is the original. So that's the jean jacket with the Disciples of Soul logo on it, and Steven signed it in 2000, I think. I didn't ask him to, actually. I was wearing it backstage talking to him, and he literally like grabbed a marker from somebody and kind of like bent me over and started writing on my back. I didn't even know what he was writing, actually. So he wrote Little Steven and so the Disciples of Soul. So we put a picture of that on the back of the book, but that is the original right there. And, my wife, we took a picture of my wife wearing it last November before we went to the E Street Band show, and Steven made some comments about her wearing it. So that's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. Well, there was one photo you didn't mention, actually, that there was a part of the book that jumped out at me. You show Little Steven a childhood photo of an early band of his, and he was surprised to see it. He didn't know how you got it, and he didn't realize that his own memory of sequence of events was off by a couple of years. Something about, I didn't know that I was playing that guitar at that point of my life. Like, he was actually legitimately, re-educated about his own life. So how did that make you feel as the person who facilitated that?
Well, so for this book, I did 2 really lengthy Zoom interviews with Steven. And I think the first one was like, I don't know, over 2.5 hours or something. And then the second one was like 90 minutes, or I don't know. They were really lengthy. But in the first one, it's just to kind of establish myself a little bit. I started by showing him this photo.
I'm just gonna zoom in on you here so we can get a good view. But there we go. Look at that. Unbelievable.
And yeah, his response immediately was like, "What the fuck is that?" You know. And he was really stunned by that. And his recollection was that he wasn't playing guitar quite that early, because this picture predates the Beatles being on the Ed Sullivan Show. And his memory was that he sang in some childhood bands, but didn't really start playing guitar until seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. So this was just a way of kind of establishing, like, I said to him, well, this is the level that I'm dealing with here. And I warned him ahead of time that I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions that you've never been asked before. I don't expect you to know the answers to all of them, because it's from a long time ago. But I think he kind of liked it. There was a few times where he was definitely enjoying the deep dive into his own career. He told me many times that he doesn't know as much about his career as I do, but I think that's to be expected.
I'm gonna circle back to that point at some point in the show, but I'm just gonna address some comments before we throw it to Harrison. So we have Robert, my Van Zandt brother. What is your white whale holy grail you haven't got of Stevie Van Zandt or other or both? I'm still jealous of your Stevie Van Zandt collection.
Right, Christy is a great supporter. She's bought multiple copies of this book for her friends and her son and stuff.
Bravo!
So, yeah, I didn't know her before this book came out. Actually, she and I'm not sure how she found out about it originally, but yeah, she's been a great supporter. So, White Whale of Steve. There's not too much I don't have actually. I think there's like one 7-inch that came out in '87 that I'm missing. There is, yeah, I don't. There might be like one 12-inch from that era as well, but I have multiple copies of every album, especially those early three from '82, '84, and '87. Those are ones that I have like multiple countries. I actually dug out my. So these are the first three, all from Japan.
Those are beautiful. Wow.
But I have like multiple. I have them all on cassette. The Men Without Women album. I think if you count all my cassettes, vinyl, CDs, I got like 15 different copies of it, probably, or 12 maybe at least. So multiple countries. I always try to get Japan, US, Canada, Italy, places like that. I do have something right beside you here that is related that I'll show you. But in terms of vinyl, yeah, there's not too much. I know I do have a wish list in my filing cabinet, which is right here. But I don't. There's not too much. There's not too much. In fact, there was a promo 12-inch from '82 that I didn't have for many, many years, and a really nice guy in the States sent me it while I was writing the book for a song called "Lying in a Bed of Fire." But one of the things that I have here is, and I showed this to Steven. He was just like, "What the fuck?" So he wrote his own autobiography that came out a few years before this book. So I had shown him that I had the copy. This was an advance that you could get that's signed by him. So kind of cool. And he expected me to have that. And then there used to be a Springsteen magazine called Backstreets. They had an exclusive where he signed it as Miami Steve. So had to have that one. And then this is the Italian hardcover. They just call it Memoir. This is a Spanish version. The title is translated as Crushes and Rejections. This is the Dutch. Stephen has a Dutch last name because his mother remarried. So we have the big paperback. That's in Dutch. Danish. This is titled Repeated Loves. German. They use an 84 shot for that. This is a weird like bootleg version. It's only like 100 pages long or something. It's terrible. I had to have it. This is a kind of a neat one with a white spine. So that kind of stands out. And finally,
Tim would hate the way the writing's going up that spine.
Yeah, he would.
Finally, this is the regular paperback, which you can see I have all these
with your notes
in there. And I also have a list of errors in the book that I submitted for the paperback edition, and he didn't use any of them. But so that's a good collection right there.
Jeez.
Actually, let me turn that bottom one around. Oh, I forgot. There's the multi-CD audio version. So that's an audio book of him reading it. So when I got that, I kind of wanted to do something a little different. I take the train to work every day. So I would be listening to this while I was reading the paperback, and I felt like he was reading to me in my headphones.
That's amazing. Yeah, well,
so
thank you, Christian, for that question. She says that you have the definitive collection of Men Without Women. And referring to your book, she said, fantastic book.
Appreciate
Next,
that.
Ryan Murphy. Thanks. A gigantic hand you have there, Mike. I guess I was. Henry, I don't know how hard it is to get, but I don't have the Rarities compilation, The Early Work. I also remember trying and failing to get the related box set, Rock and Roll Rebel, The Early Work. At some point, I wasn't even sure the box set was ever released. Okay, so there you go, Henry. You can check it out on eBay. And I believe that is all the comments.
I have that box. Actually, I have a credit in that box set.
I think you mentioned in the book that you and Steven spent time talking about, critiquing it.
Yeah, before years before the book, before that box set came out, his team was in touch with me, and I did contribute some of the stuff or at least some lists of like discography kind of stuff for that box set. So the box set is out. It is true. I think it came out kind of during the pandemic or 2019 maybe. And yeah, I got a credit in there, so I was very proud of that.
That's awesome. All right, Harrison, I'm going to throw it back to you.
All right, so I'm going to briefly channel the spirit of Tim Derling and ask if there are any Stevie Van Zandt 8 tracks.
That's a great question.
If there was, I'd have them. Well, you've probably seen then. I had a guy up here make me a bootleg 8-track of my. Actually, where is it? Give me a sec. I might have it right here.
We always have to. At some point or another, the show always diverts back to 8 tracks.
See, it pays to be organized. There's no benefits to not being organized. So here's a cheap trick.
Oh, let's get a zoom in here. There we go. Yeah.
Still Competition, 8-track, and my third book, Wheatfield Empire, 8-track.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about those. I didn't reach out to the same guy to make me a Steven one. I better get on that.
All right, so staying on the topic of books then, I just want to ask, do you have any advice for aspiring music writers?
Yeah, absolutely. I get asked this kind of stuff all the time, and I love helping.
Oh, geez.
I love helping people with this kind of thing. One of the things with my books, I tried to pick topics that there aren't already a lot of books about. Like I would love to, write a book about Miles Davis or Bob Dylan or Kiss or anything like that. But there's already so many books about all those artists. So that's something that all my books have in common, that when I wrote them, there's either very few or none or no books about, or at least none that are still in print. So, if you want to kind of get something out there, I think that's a good thing to start. Pick a really good topic. In terms of writing, one thing that my mentor Martin Popoff taught me was to write every day.
Yeah.
If you're working on a book project, try to write almost every day, because if you don't, the tone can kind of change over a period. If you leave it for a bunch of weeks, it could change. The toughest thing about doing a project like this is just having the commitment to do it. In the last, 5 or 6, 7 years, I've talked to like a dozen people, either over coffee or over a beer or through Zoom or on the phone, and they have an idea about a book and they want to know how do you do it, how do you follow through, and they have a lot of questions about it. Out of all those people, I think only one guy actually published a book, and some of them, the others, they every once in a while I hear from them and they're making excuses of why they can't do it or whatever, which is fine. I mean, that's your life. You can, I don't judge you for that. But especially there are some people who reached out to me right at the beginning of the pandemic, and man, that was a time that you could get a lot of work done because everyone was just at home. And actually, the guy that I'm talking about, his book, he did most of the writing during the pandemic because he was at home every day. So you just got to keep at it. It's a little, I wish that some of the people that I talked to about books had followed through, not because I necessarily, not for my own ego gratification. I'm working on having zero ego as part of my studies, but just to see, because I know what it feels like to not write a book. I was starting a book project in in the late 90s or something, and I was really committed to it. And it was more of a true crime culture, like a pop culture true crime thing. And I was really committed to it. And then my life got real busy and real messy, and I just stopped. I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy or the time to devote to it. And it drove me nuts for years that I had like 3/4 of a book written and nothing ever came from it. I'd look back and think, geez, if I kept with it, that would be out. Like, I would have a book out there. And then years and years went by, and I just felt real crummy about it. So when people ask me, like, well, how do you find the time? How do you find the focus? How do you keep at it? It's because I know what it's like to not write a book, and it sucks. Like, that thing just hung over. And by the time years went by, I kind of lost some interest in that topic. I felt I was out of that scene, so I couldn't really go back to it. So when the idea of me writing my first book about Nazareth came up, I was like, I can't let that happen again. I can't lose steam. I can't have half a book that I just put in the bottom of the drawer. Like, it was a terrible feeling, So to focus, to stick with it, to write every day, to have some sort of writing schedule. The way that my books are set up, it's kind of easy that I'm doing album by album. So I just have a list of those albums, and we just go through. And you just add all the information, and you listen, and you hear different things, and then you interview musicians, and you get your quotes, and then you go on to the next one, and you go on to the next one. And then if something pops up from one of those old albums, or I get to interview somebody that I hadn't talked to yet, then you just pop those quotes in there, and you just kind of keep going. Like, I'm pretty well trained now because I've done so many of them. But staying focused, keeping at it, I would have many, many evenings where I'd love to sit back and watch a movie, and I can't because I've set myself up that, no, tonight is the night that I have to listen to these, 3 different versions of the 7-inch single to determine whether there's a, stereo or a mono mix. And yeah, it sounds like real music geek stuff, and it is. But if you don't do the work, you won't have the final product. So I think the biggest thing is time management.
So what I just took away from the last bit that you just said about listening to the 7-inch single is that you're providing information that isn't necessarily readily available right before that on Discogs or what have you. So you're providing original research on historical records. Yeah,
I'm real happy that I think all 4 of my books definitely have some information in them that's not public knowledge, that I've either wondered about for a long time and been able to get somebody in the band to confirm with me, or through independent sources or whatever. Like, I like having that. Like, for any of my books, if you think you know every single thing about that band, and I wouldn't even say that I know every single thing about anything, but if you do, there's definitely going to be something in those books that you don't know or you didn't know previously.
So there you go, folks. If you are interested in Steven Van Zandt, there's going to be stuff in this book that you won't know, even if you have Little Steven's autobiography, which leads me to circle back to what you were saying before. You spent all these hours on Zoom with Little Steven, and his book was already out at that point, right? So I'm just kind of curious, with his own book on the shelves, what made him want to help you out with your book, which would technically be competition, I guess, still competition. But that just seems really kind of him to me.
Well, I think because once I kind of established myself, and I pitched it to him in Red Bank, New Jersey, like I don't know, 6 months before we actually did the interview, and that went really well. Because I mentioned some stuff that he had no idea what I was talking about. So once he knew that was my take, he was all in, because I think for two main reasons. One, he understood that this book would complement his autobiography more than be competition. Like, because it's his autobiography, he talks about his parents splitting up when he was young, and, you know, getting his first car, and like a lot of stuff like that. And that's what you would do in an autobiography. He also talks a lot about meeting political figures, and like meeting like terrorist guys in South Africa, and like trying to deal with, you know, a lot of political upheaval and stuff, which is really gripping stuff to read. Whereas my book it's not just about his music. I talk about some other stuff too, but it's still kind of more related. So he knew I was going to be going really deep into his music more than he did. And I think the second reason he really wanted me to do it was he wanted to find out what he'd been doing all those years. Because he's told me numerous. First, he told me that there's 50% of the book he doesn't remember, and then he changed that to 75% of the book that he doesn't know, which is, you know, again, to be expected. He's busy. He's traveling all over the world, and he's making records and stuff. I don't expect him to know, you know, what the 7-inch B-side is of some, you know, European single and stuff like that. He's not supposed to know that. You know, that's my job. So there isn't really any competition. I think, if anything, people who don't know too much about Steven, if you read his book, or there was a recent HBO documentary about him called Disciple, directed by a friend of mine named Bill Tech. Those are both kind of introductions to Steven's world. So if you watch the Bill Tech documentary Disciple, or you read Steven's autobiography, you're going to learn a lot. And at that point, if you want to know more, that's where this comes in. and then you're done. And you probably don't need to know any more after that. So I think all three of these things really complement each other well, actually.
I love everything about that answer. Let's get Christy's comments back up. As big of a fan as you are, you seem so chill when you're with Stevie Van Zandt. When you met up with him on the ESB tour in Toronto, do you still get fanish around him, or not really?
Well, first time I met him was in 1984, so we kind of go back. I mean, I'm still well aware of who he is. You know, it's not like I just kind of like brush it off. You know, but yeah, I've met him many times, and we've had many conversations, and then these lengthy Zoom interviews. But I never want to lose that part of being a fan. I never wanted it just to be like, oh, that's just Steven again. You know, what's he want? And I don't think that would ever happen, because I am a fan first and foremost. But I don't get tongue tied around him. I mean, we kind of have enough of a relationship, I think, in a way that, you know, we can talk openly when I do see him. But I'm still well aware. You know, like, I first really got into him, or even if you go back to when I first met him in 1984, you know, I think I was 15, or I don't know. There's no way to tell how old I was back then. There's no way to do that math. But to think back of being like, you know, a kid and meeting him, and now not only am I meeting him and speaking as adults, but he's asking me questions about his career. So we're kind of, it's more of a give take. You know, I wouldn't say that we're equals on any level, because I look up to him, and I always have. But some of my answers for his questions do have a level of validity for him, because he knows that I probably know what I'm talking about, or I can back it up with facts. So there's more of a mutual respect maybe going on there, which is still a bit of a weird headspace to kind of get into. That you know, your hero is asking you, but it's great, and I'm really I appreciate the relationship. I appreciate everything that he did to help with the book. You know, he's tweeted about it quite often, and when I met him in Toronto last November to give him finally his copy, he was great to me and my wife. So it is kind of a cool thing to be a fan of somebody when I was a teenager in high school, and now almost a collaborative relationship on a book about his whole career. You know, I always think that there's probably like old ex-girlfriends or people from high school or something who like they could see this in a bookstore and go, oh, I used to know this guy who was obsessed with him. And then they're going to see the name and go, Jesus, it's him. I don't know if that would really happen, but I would like to see that happen.
I think somewhere in the multiverse that definitely happened. I'm going to do a segue before I get to Christia's next comment. But, you know, you mentioned talking to a hero and whatnot. And from personal experience, you know, Harrison and I, we've interviewed Blaze Bayley from Iron Maiden. But there's another level of like, holy crap, when it's a celebrity that like my parents know. So we have Little Steven here. My dad, he was like my dad's favorite character on The Sopranos. So it's like my dad knows who we're talking about tonight, which just to me that elevates the importance of the person in our universe. And so that was my segue to The Sopranos. Were you a fan of the show?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big movie guy. I consider myself, you know, as much of a movie guy as a music guy. Maybe not quite as much, but yeah, I mean, I knew he was in it, so that was interesting, and that was real weird to think that he was, you know, going to be on a TV show, especially that came around at a time where he wasn't doing too much publicly. So to hear all of a sudden he's going to be on some mafia show, that was kind of weird. But no, I got into it right away. I've watched the entire series many, many times, and I rewatched the whole thing while I was writing the book, so I could have a chapter on Sopranos in there. And incredibly, I was finding out stuff about his role and like little kind of Easter eggs that I'd never noticed before. And I brought some of those up to him. And surprisingly, he told me he's never really seen the whole show. He's only seen a couple of episodes here and there. He's never actually watched the entire Sopranos, which I thought was... I told him, you should check it out. It's pretty good.
I agree. Now, I wanted to test you. You mentioned in the book a scene where they're watching The Godfather Part 3, and he does that, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Did you know that that scene was included as an Easter egg in the Godfather box set back then?
Of Steven doing it?
I'm certain it was the scene from The Sopranos, and it was an Easter egg. Remember the black 5-disc Godfather box set that had the first 3 movies and like some bonus? There's 4 or 5 discs. I'm 100% certain that there was an Easter egg on there, which was that scene of him doing the reenactment. And doesn't the DVD jam in the player or something like that, and Tony loses his temper? Something like that.
Well, Steven does that Pacino quote a few times in the first season. It happened.
Different scenes.
Yeah, I think he did it like four different times where he does this. Like, yeah, it's Steven playing Silvio, playing Al Pacino, playing Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. But yeah, there's a whole chapter on Sopranos, and I included there's a whole chapter on Lilyhammer as well, which was Steven's own HBO mob show.
And to this comment, Cheap Trick, Nazareth, Burton Cummings, same question. What was your biggest fan type, damn, I might lose it moment with any of these artists?
Burton Cummings is somebody that I've also known for a really long time, and he was a great help with my Guess Who book. Probably the greatest moment in all of those would be when my wife and I had our honeymoon in Scotland. So it had been arranged that we would meet original Nazareth vocalist Dan McCafferty at a local pub in Dunfermline, which is, of course, where Nazareth are from and where they still live, remarkably. So that was a neat thing. And I'd met Dan like a couple times in the 90s or something, but this was the first time since my book came out and meeting him in Dunfermline in his local pub. But the moment that really got me the most was, so we had a few rounds in the afternoon, and I go to the washroom, and when I come out, I'm just washing my hands, and I stood outside the washroom doors for a while looking over at this table. I go, that's my wife talking to Dan McCafferty. what's going on here? And he's just asking her, like, what do you think of Scotland? Where are you guys going on your honeymoon and stuff? But that was kind of a weird, moment in my brain too, of thinking like, wow, this is the person I just married, and she's like hanging out with Dan McCafferty in Dunfermline, Scotland, in his local pub. That was like an odd thing. The other thing that Dan did, and I think I've said this before, but so he was there with a mutual friend of ours named Richard. So at one point, Dan gets his phone out and he calls somebody, and he leaves a voice message. I don't think I told you this story before, Mike, but so Dan McCafferty's leaving a voice message, and he says, "Hey, it's Dan. Give me a call back. Gotta see if you can drop the kids off." And he's got grandkids and stuff like that, so I don't think anything of it. And I think Richard came back to the table and asked him, "Who are you talking to?" And Dan says, "Oh, I called Billy, or I don't know what the name was. I called our friend to see if he can drop the kids off." And then he turns to me and Vanessa and says, "Where are you guys staying anyway?" And I realized, we're the kids. So he was calling a friend of his just to come to the pub to take us to like the bed and breakfast that we were staying in. I was like, no, it's okay. Like, you don't have to do that. So that was also like a real kind of moment.
That does ring a bell. I think either I'm having a deja vu, or maybe I have heard that story before. That is freaking cool. Harrison, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I was going to round out my questions with a couple of questions about a couple of other bands. So first up, I love live albums, and there's a lot of bands where I just own live releases from them. Now, Bruce Springsteen has a lot of live albums. What would you say is the best one, or the one to get?
Well, that's an odd situation, because for many years in the 70s and early 80s, he was always asked why he never did a live album. And then finally put one out, and it was a 5 LP box set, figuring that's going to cover everything. Now, since then, there's been, he puts out like a live CD from almost every concert on his current tours.
A lot of archival releases, I think, as well.
And he does those as well. Yeah, I think there's like one a month that comes out. They are burned CDRs, though, I have to say. They're not actual silver disc CDs, which I really don't. I got a problem with that.
That's kind of like that instant live format.
Yeah, except they're stuff from the vault. So anyway, a real important one is there's an early, I think it's 1974 or 75, from the Main Point. That's before Steven was in the band, but there's a violin player, and they do this real slow version of the Bob Dylan song called "I Want You." That's really remarkable. There are a lot of early radio broadcasts. So I would say almost anything from the 70s, Passaic, New Jersey, 78 is great. Really almost anything from the River Tour. There's a Tempe, Arizona 1980 DVD that's in the River box set. You could probably watch the whole thing on Bruce's channel or something. That's amazing. To me, that's like core Springsteen, is like the 80-81 River Tour. To me, that's like as good as it gets. But I'm a big fan of live albums too. To me, some of my favorite bands I got into through live albums. It's probably not a coincidence that some of the books that I wrote are bands who released albums like Snaz, Live at Budokan, Live at the Paramount. So yeah, I'm a big, I love Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous, and all those 70s and early 80s live records. I'm a huge fan of.
All right, and so my final question. So Motorhead, I've seen you post a lot of Motorhead albums on Facebook before that you've been listening to. So I want to ask, do you have a favorite Lemmy moment, either on or off the stage? Because my favorite has probably got to be where he messes up the lyrics to Motorhead on the live show that's the bonus to the 40th anniversary of Iron Fist.
I do have a lot of Motorhead, that's true. And I was reminded today that there's a new CD that came out a week ago of punk bands covering Motorhead, and it's in my in holds kind kind of like box at work. I was supposed to buy it yesterday, I think. So I got to pick that up tomorrow. Honestly, the documentary Lemmy, I watch that thing a few times a year. I think he's so entertaining. He's so funny. He's got this weird moral sense, like he's this kind of crazy, drug taking, heavy drinking, womanizing guy, but he also has these standards. He's got these, really kind of strict moral code, which is really interesting for somebody in his line of work. So I think that's one of the best music documentaries ever. I got a lot of them, but I would say that whole documentary, and even if you get the Blu-ray, it's got a second disc of like deleted songs. So you see him playing with Head Cat, that rockabilly trio that he had on the side. I watch that documentary all the time. I think Lemmy is a really entertaining character.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, you mentioned Lemmy's morals, and that kind of brings me to my final question, which is, before reading this, I didn't really know anything about Stevie Van Zandt and Sun City and South Africa and apartheid and all that stuff. So that was actually, for me, new information. When I was a kid at that age, it was just kind of like a word that was in newspapers and scary evening news broadcasts. With the benefit of 2020 hindsight, obviously Little Steven did a lot for awareness, shall we say. What do you think his role is in the overall toppling of the dominoes that was apartheid when it finally did collapse?
Significant. He brought that topic to a lot of people that didn't previously know about it. In 1985, when he started talking about it, I was in high school, but I didn't know anything about it. I don't even know if I knew, anything about South Africa back then. So from him talking about it so much, and the record that he put out, Sun City, a lot of interviews that he was doing to promote it at the time, that opened up a whole world to me. And that was a period where, like, for a young person in high school, I was being turned on to a lot of political issues that I just didn't know anything about. So Steven got a lot of artists who were scheduled to play South Africa to instead adhere to the boycott and not perform there. He got some artists who had performed there to apologize and realize that what they did was wrong. They didn't know when they went. They thought they were playing to integrated audiences, and they thought things were equal, and they were getting a ton of money, and that was was okay. So he did open up a lot of people's mind. Nelson Mandela gave him a lot of credit for the apartheid government coming down. So yeah, really, really significant. And they make a big point of that. There's like the documentary that Bill Tech did, Disciple, is broken into 4 parts, and the whole third part is all about Sun City. So you see Steven like with Nelson Mandela, and they really talk about how significant that, he appeared on the Donahue morning show to debate one of the GMs of the Sun City Casino from Botswana in South Africa. So real fiery stuff. They get pretty angry at each other and stuff. And Steven didn't back down from any of that. So I think his role is pretty big in all that.
Fantastic. So folks, at this point, if you're not interested in the book, then I can't help you. You're going to hear stuff in this book that you're not going to find in the official Steven Van Zandt autobiography. You're going to get an in-depth discography. This man has done original research. He has listened to these singles. He has spent countless nights up at his computer with headphones on while his wife was trying to sleep. A lifelong achievement, really. And what's next?
I think I'm retired. I don't think I'm not. With all the previous books, when the book would go to the publisher and I would have downtime, I would start on my next book. So now this book's been out for a while, and I'm not. I don't think I'm doing any more books. I mean, I love the research, and I love finding those tidbits, and I love interviewing the musicians and stuff like that. But the marketing for them is just real difficult. I have a hard time. I thought my Guess Who book could get some great publicity in Canada, and that was a real struggle. I got hardly any coverage at all. So you have a Canadian author writing a book about one of the biggest or original big Canadian bands. Most Canadian media had no interest in it. I've got Springsteen websites and Springsteen podcasts who don't want to talk about this book. Some do, and I've been on a couple of shows, but I didn't think that was going to be a hurdle that I would have to leap at all. And it's disappointing. There's a lot of Springsteen information in this book. So even if you're just a Springsteen completist and you need to know everything, I mean, there's a picture of Stephen and Bruce in this book that's never been seen before. But just kind of banging my head against the wall, just saying like, well, what's the issue here? Why are we not talking about this? Why can't I get on E Street Radio, or why can't I, talk on some of these Springsteen fan Facebook groups or podcasts or something? It's weird. I didn't think it was going to happen, So Stephen likes the book, and a lot of the guys who I interviewed, like Jean Beauvoir, Jean Beauvoir called me at home to tell me how much he liked the book. And then he sent me a photo of him holding the book. So I've learned to measure success in different ways. Those things mean a lot more to me than, some newspaper somewhere in the States who doesn't want to review the book because they reviewed Stephen's autobiography 6 years ago or something, So it's frustrating, but I've decided to kind of try and look at it a different way for my own well-being.
I look at that comment down there, and that's the exact kind of book that guys like Harrison and myself and Tim Derling and all these other music freaks that watch the channel, that's the kind of book that we're looking for. You mentioned Martin Popoff, similar levels of intense information in this book. So regardless of whether the other podcasts want to talk to you or not, I raise my fist to you, my friend. You've done a fantastic job here, and I enjoy your work very, very much. And I encourage people to seek this book out. Robert, where can they buy the book?
It's around everywhere. You can get on. You can get it directly from the publisher. You can get it from Amazon. If you've got Amazon Prime, you probably get free shipping or something. So some people like to do that. If you don't like dealing with Amazon, it is part of the Barnes and Noble's inventory. It's also part of the Indigo books in Canada here. So any of those stores will order it for you. I mean, they probably add a couple bucks to it so that they can make some money. But they'll order it into the store. You can order it off the Barnes & Noble or Indigo website and get it delivered to you. So it's really around. I mean, I try to make sure that the book is as many. I would hate for any Stephen fan or any Bruce fan or Southside Johnny fan who's interested in it to not know that it exists. And that's all I really want to do is get the word out so that people know that it exists. And you can get copies directly from me as well. I still have, I don't know if I still have hardcovers or paperbacks, but I still have a bunch of copies. People like to get signed copies, sometimes directly from me. And I don't know if I have, oh yes. We can include some bookmarks. So I usually send out, and that shows all the older titles on the back there. But yeah, it's around. You can definitely get it either directly from me or any of those other sources I mentioned.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for doing this. Harrison and I will be back next week with our next episode of 50 Years of Iron Maiden. We are doing the Dance of Death album next week, so check that out. Same time, same channel. Robert, do you have anything going on that you want to plug before we say goodbye?
I think that's it. Just getting ready for Christmas. I manage a record store, as you know, so we're going to be real busy. If you're in the Toronto or Mississauga, Etobicoke area, come by and visit me at Sunrise at Cloverdale Mall. You'd also get my books at my store, actually. I should mention that if you're in the area, so you don't have to pay for shipping at all. So I always have the books there. Come by and say hi.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Robert. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And perhaps we'll have you back in the future. I know that you're a jazz fan, and we haven't done any jazz episodes in a while, so that might be something fun to do.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Harrison, as you know, we always like to go out on a song, and I'm going to randomly pick Paul McLeod, Down on the Streets. So see you next week for 50 Years of Iron Maiden. Check out Robert on Instagram. Take care, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Something going on. Don't tell my baby I'm gonna forget some. Baby, she's been gone, and I can't do but wrong to my baby. Down in the street they got snow blues, boys around. Old painted ladies on bright corners with blue hearts. Baby, she's been gone, and I can't do but wrong to my baby. Don't cry for me as I tear out my own. This misery is mine, it's all I got.